Welcome into the newest episode of Side Mission. Like always, I'm your host, Rusty Ellis, joined by just two of the boys, Kyle and Matt. You know, it's almost like the good old days, when there was only three of us to begin with.
It really is.
It's almost like the good old days, these last couple episodes. It's been peaceful. I don't know why that is. I don't know. Well, anyways, we're talking about episode 8 of The Last of Us, and fellas, safe to say there was a lot of hype. A lot of hype coming into this episode. Obviously, The winter section in the game is one of the best parts, if not the best part of the game. And I think that there are some things that this episode does really well. I think there are other things that the episode absolutely fell short in, and there's absolutely one story element of this that was 100% forced, that felt completely unnecessary. We'll get that out of the way first, so we can go ahead and get into the actual critique. The decision to make David some kind of pastor feels like a very, very forced shot at Christianity, and I have given this show a lot of credit. It stayed away from being really, I don't want to say controversial, that seems like an overreaction, but the show's done a good job of kind of staying away from subject material like that, and in my opinion, not only did that feel forced, and I'm interested to hear what you two think as well, I don't think it added anything to the character. I think that it did exactly what they wanted it to do, and that I think it's going to make certain people mad, and it's going to make certain people cheer. Didn't work for me. I'm interested to hear what you think. Kyle, you first, then Matt. Just kind of, did that work at all for y'all, or am I alone here?
I honestly did not really care for it that much. I thought that David from the game was fine. He didn't really, I think, need a lot of reasoning other than he's desperate, he has a group that he's trying to survive with, and the only thing he knows about Joel and Ellie is that they killed some of their group members. I thought that was, enough incentive to kind of show the other side, show that, they're not just doing this because they're evil. And, once it actually gets into it and you see the big twist, that's when you learn, oh, wow, these guys really are evil, and none of it really needed to have some sort of religious overtone. I thought it was very forced.
Agreed.
Yeah, to me, it didn't really provide much to the character himself, because anyone who's played the game already knows what this whole episode is setting it up to be, and just I don't know. I guess I really wanted to add that from teacher to preacher line from Ellie or something. But I always see this happen in media where it's always like, and it's always this moment, I call it the "Where's your God now" moment, where there's a character who, has religious beliefs like David does in this show, and there's just always that character, whereas Ellie was basically being like, oh, you believe in that shit, that kind of thing.
No, 100%, I agree.
I'm just always like, there's always this throwaway line that has to come at religion. Now, I'm not saying that this is what they did on purpose, was to come at, Christianity, but it was just such an odd choice to make, because the game already set up David as quite the antagonist for Ellie and Joel in this section. So, again, just like with you two, it didn't really do much for me as far as his character goes. But I mean, he was very well portrayed as evil. He even had his whole line of talking about how he was the shepherd and the people in his group were the sheep. And they, I was like, I've heard that one before. So,
yeah,
it's so overplayed just hearing that kind of thing.
No, and that's, so my whole take, and we talked before we got on here to record, my whole thing was David in the game, and I know that I've very much been on the kick of, if you want the game, play the game. I think that this show has done a really good job of deviating from the game in several different aspects. Throughout the first 8 episodes, I feel like they've done a really good job. This is the first episode where I felt like, okay, maybe staying a little bit closer to the subject material and the source material would have helped you out a little bit, because David in the game has more of a survivor vibe. There's none of this, he's evil because, well, he believes in God, that's why he's evil. Like, there's none of that. He's evil because he's in trying to do what he needs to do to survive. He's turned to cannibalism. And he's got this group that has turned to cannibalism. And that's an evil enough premise for me that adding the religious aspect kind of feels like an unwarranted and unnecessary shot. And it's really not a shot at religion, because I'm going to be honest, it's a conversation a lot of people are not ready to have. It's not a shot at religion. It's a shot at one belief system. So we'll move on from that. But as far as things that worked in this episode, and this is something I think we all agree on, I love the way that they are using characters or using voice actors from the game. I think that Troy Baker was phenomenal this episode as James. Didn't have a lot to do, didn't have a lot to say, but I feel like when he was on screen, again, you have to give these voice actors props because, and Matt, you could talk a little bit about this. Give them props because this is not what they're used to doing. Voice actors are very much used to just being that, just a voice. And instead having to portray a character on screen, there's a whole, you have to find the mannerisms, you have to find how they walk, how they talk, you have to find all of that. And I feel like every actor from the game has done a good job of that so far.
Yeah, definitely. I'd say Troy Baker did a great job with James, as we talked about. I feel like he's definitely in his element because when they are recording the lines and getting the movement and all of that for the games, they are doing the motion capture. So they are pretty much put in a scenario, but, they're not being filmed like you are when you're filming a TV show. So there's an extra layer that goes into it when it comes to being, filmed on a camera, and this can be edited and all that, and put on the episode. So I think with the character he was given, I think he played him really well. There's always that that sense of doubt in David that James has, and Troy Baker did such a great job at portraying that doubt, even where David himself has to be like, do you still trust me? And
yes,
one thing I will say is in that final section. In the episode, right before James, gets chopped in the neck, there was legitimately there was a lot of fear in James because I don't think he technically agreed with what they were doing, even though throughout the episode, he pretty much implied he did want to kill Ellie. So I don't know. I didn't feel like he necessarily was wanting to do what they were fixing to do, but then that the fear in his eyes, I love the big reveal where Ellie's like, I'm also bit, I'm bit, I've been bitten. And I like the facial expression. Like you can read it on Troy Baker's face, James's face. I'm kind of like getting the actors and the characters mixed up here.
No, you're doing good.
For I don't know if this is his first time doing acting in a show. I've not seen a lot of things with Troy Baker outside of video games, but if this was his first time on a TV show, I thought he did a great job.
No, I do too. I think he did a really, really good job. I think that was actually one piece of character that they did kind of stick with the game and the source material on was James is like that in the game as well. He very much doubts David's leadership in the game, and that's prevalent throughout the entire winter section where after you meet David, it's prevalent the entire time. He doubts that they should go and give Ellie medicine. He doubts that they should keep her alive, and then he's not really 100% sold that they should kill her. So I think that they did a good job of kind of keeping that element alive. Kyle, let's talk about kind of the final confrontation in this episode, because again, there are parts of this episode that work. And I think that the interactions between David and Ellie that are calm, that are more just them talking, I feel like those interactions are fantastic. And I think you agreed with me on that. For me, where everything starts to lose it a little bit is when all the yelling starts. That for me is where I kind of check out a little bit, and it feels more like a caricature than a character that's being played.
Right. Yeah, I think that there was some stuff in this episode that they skipped over, and I think they shouldn't have. I would have absolutely substituted the entire church scene for David and Ellie fighting the infected to kind of try and build that bond before revealing that, oh, I know that you're the person who killed my men, And the entire fight scene at the end felt kind of short.
It felt rushed.
Yeah.
Very rushed.
I know that in the game, obviously, you go out and hit him and then you go hide again, and in the show that wouldn't be really realistic because you just follow her. But they could have at least, traded blows back and forth, or, a little bit more than just, one stab and then he pins her before she ends up grabbing the cleaver and hacking him apart. There wasn't really a lot of, back and forth between them in that scene like there was in the game. It was mostly just him yelling to her, and then she just comes out and stabs him. And I think that as a whole, this episode needed more David and Ellie interactions, and what they gave us. I mean, I wouldn't say disappointed by, but I think I feel just there should have been more. Like I said, the whole scene where David and Ellie fight the infected would have been cool, and it would have been another, scene where they could have shown they didn't have to have a horde of infected on screen. It could have been another scene where they just get attacked. They get attacked by like 5 or 10, and really make them struggle against it to show that just a few of these infected are a big deal. I think skipping over that and choosing to include a very forced scene with the church and him like taking off his glove and smacking that girl, it was a little awkward because I just didn't really understand the direction that was coming from. I felt like that wasn't so much desperation as it was I'm just controlling. I'm just going to be the big bad guy here. And David in the game was, like we said, doing things out of desperation. This didn't really feel like that.
He wasn't doing things out of control. Yeah, 100%. I think that you're spot on with that. Kyle, you just said that you wouldn't say you were disappointed. I'll say it. I was disappointed by this episode. I'll say it. I don't have a problem owning that because and I'm not saying that you do necessarily. I rewatched the episode because I was like, maybe I missed something. Maybe I was tired and I wasn't paying great attention. Maybe there was something I missed. And I went back and watched it and I was just like, it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work because I will say there are moments where I'm like, okay, this feels very, very spot on. One of them is the whole conversation, the first conversation that Ellie and David have when they're in that little rundown building with the fire, waiting for James to get back with the medicine. At that point in the game, you really kind of trust David. You don't feel like he's up to no good. And in this one, the conversation is very much like, how could this dude be a jackass? How could he be a cannibal? Like, I don't see this guy being the villain. And then obviously everything gets flipped on its head. He reveals like, oh, by the way, we sent a bunch of people into town. Only X amount of them came back. And the funny thing is, the crazy man that killed him was traveling with a little girl. Yeah. And it hit just like the game, in my opinion. That line hit. As did the line of Ellie breaking his finger and saying Ellie is the name of the little girl who broke your fucking finger. There are things that work. But it feels like there's just a little bit missing. And that little bit that's missing is substituted for other things that just didn't land with me. Or based on the sound of it, didn't land with us really as much as I think it may have landed for other people. And again, if there are people that this landed with, good for you. I hope you enjoyed the episode. It didn't work for me. It didn't work for me. I just kind of feel like, Kyle, you've been spot on this whole time. There's something missing. And I think that something is that, again, we see next to no infected. And I will say, and Matt, I know you have something to add, and then I'll get off my soapbox. I think that an issue that I saw someone bring up a few episodes ago was, my problem is, in this world where the infected are made out to be this big, gigantic threat, and they have been, outside of Left Behind, it's been since episode 5 since the infected were really that dangerous, and episode 7 was only one infected.
Yeah.
That to me, at a certain point, we're hearing a lot about the infected. We're hearing a lot about it, but it's not being shown. And I just had something else pop into my mind, but Matt, I want to get to what you had to add because I'm interested to hear what you have to say.
Well, just to kind of add to it, it almost seems like they kind of blew their load with the infected earlier because we've already seen the clickers, the runners, the
Yes.
stalkers, and the bigger guys, the bloaters. Yeah, but I want to say that one thing I was disappointed about in this episode is how downplayed the cannibalism was.
Very
Because
much so. Very much so.
I remember because in the game, literally David just flat out. I mean, James is flat out butchering a body in front of Ellie. It's not even subtly hinted at, that they're cannibals. Like it is flat out in your face. You know exactly what these people are. And the fact that if I remember correctly, there were in the whole scene where they were, about to butcher Ellie, there are bodies hanging. Ellie sees bodies of these people who have been butchered.
Oh, it's like a meat market. Yeah, 100%.
Exactly. And none of that was there. I wouldn't have even known that they were cannibals had I not played the game up until the point where Ellie sees the ear. I would have been super confused about what's so bad about these guys. They're just a group trying to survive.
So something else that I had just popped into my head, and this it's not really popped into my head. I thought about it, but I kind of just forgot to bring it up when I was talking until just now. There is something that the game did really, really well that I feel like this episode did not do well, and that's that there is a hint in the game at the idea, and it's hinted at very subtly, that David was very much going to, and I don't know how we're listed as explicit on Spotify, so I don't think there's a problem with me using this word. Basically, it's hinted at very subtly in the game that David is going to rape Ellie. It's hinted at very, very subtly, and I don't think that it worked him being just outright about it in the episode. Because for me, as a writer, I'm more of a show me the actions, don't tell me the actions. Don't tell me what you're going to do. Let your actions speak. And I'm not saying that, in the episode they should have had him rape her. No, I'm not saying that whatsoever. I just feel like it being more demonstrative, it being more direct, it didn't have that same effect at all. It feels, I don't want to say forced, because, again, in the game, it is hinted at. I'm not going to sit here and pretend in the game that it's not hinted at. It is 100% hinted at in multiple lines of dialogue. But here, he basically all but says that he's going to do that to her. Yeah. And I just don't. Kyle, just add it to the list of things that it didn't work.
It felt, I don't know, it felt just a little bit too vulgar, I guess, because, like you said, in the game, they definitely hinted at it. And, it's another one of those factors that you can add right on top of why David is such a monster, but I don't know, they almost reversed, because with the cannibalism it was very hinted at, and with David and Ellie, I mean, he all but says it was just right out there. I mean, I agree. I think that also in the game we don't really see any of the civilians, I don't think. So as far
I'm glad you brought this up.
As far as we know in the game, everybody knows about the cannibalism, and they've just accepted it because they're not hiding it. Like Matt said, there were bodies just hanging there around where Ellie was being kept, and I don't think they really needed to add on. I think it would have been better if David wasn't hiding the fact that they were eating people, if everybody knew, because it really sets an effect that, it's not just David that's this desperate, it's this entire group. David's just their leader, but everybody's willing, everybody's participating in the cannibalism, and, that's, I think, a little bit scarier than just one or two guys who actually know what's going on, And
I agree.
Yeah, that, and the other thing that I really wished we had seen more of was Joel's journey to Ellie.
Yeah, Joel's barely in the episode. Pedro Pascal and I get it that this part of the game, he does kind of get sidelined a little bit. But my God, this episode, he's barely in it. And Pedro Pascal's been one of the best parts of the show. I just hate that, again, like last episode, I understood why he wasn't in it. The last episode was about Ellie and Riley, was about Left Behind. That makes 100% sense. I don't know. This one, like, Joel does have a presence in the winter section in the game, and it's kind of weird how they omitted some things and other things they kind of added. Like, for example, David doing what he was going to do to Ellie, hinted at in the game very subtly, very, very direct in the show. Cannibalism, very, very direct in the game. It's in your face in the game. And they just kind of dance around it in the show. Like, they just kind of, it's like they refused to go all in on it. And it's like, at a certain point, I think that this show has been a hit. It's been a masterpiece so far. And I think that if I had to rate this episode, I'd still give it probably an 8 out of 10. It's better than a lot of other shows that are out right now as far as, their worst episodes. I think that there are maybe 1 or 2 episodes worse than this one that have come out, but I don't know. I personally felt very, very disappointed by this because I feel like this should have been the best episode. And there are so many things that just did not work as a whole. But show's not over. The show is not over yet because next week, or I guess later this week, really, I don't know why I said next week. It's not next week at this point. Later this week, we'll get the season finale of season 1 of The Last of Us. We pretty much know what's going to happen. The interesting part is we've seen Troy Baker, we've seen Jeffrey Pierce, we've seen Merle Dandridge, and I'm sure we're going to see more of Merle Dandridge, of course. If we don't, there's a problem. We're going to see Ashley Johnson in this episode, who is the original voice of Ellie. And supposedly, she is going to be playing Ellie's mom. So that, I feel, and Matt, you can talk about that a little bit, or how much you're looking forward to that, because I feel like that's a really interesting wrinkle, because we've never seen Ellie's mom. So I think that's really interesting.
Yep, I think it's going to add a whole entire new layer to Ellie, especially seeing, what her mom went through while she was pregnant with Ellie, and leading to Ellie's birth, and then just how Ellie ended up in the situation that she's at. So I hope that they really do, I guess, I kind of feel like maybe the episode is going to begin with this, because this is the last episode.
I think so too.
And the way that the episodes have been opening are completely different stories to what's going on and how we're used to it from playing the game. So I feel like the episode will open with a look into the past with Ellie's mom. So I really would like to see what they're going to do with that storyline and see what it adds to the overall overarching plot. So yeah, I'm really excited to see her as and just like we got Troy Baker, I'm really interested to see Ashley acting.
The funniest thing about all of this, and y'all are gonna this is gonna blow your minds maybe, unless you already knew this. So for Troy Baker, that's probably the first time any of us saw him on the big in live action acting. That's probably the first time. Do you guys know that all 3 of us have seen Ashley Johnson in a movie before? We have. So go and look this up. This is I noticed this, I think, a year or so ago because I was watching through all the Marvel movies again. Ashley Johnson plays a random civilian that is interviewed on the news at the end of the first Avengers movie.
No way.
I'm so dead ass. Like, go look up the ending, like after the Battle of New York and all that. Go look in like the aftermath, like all the TV, the news reports, and you will be shocked when she pops up on the screen. I've looked it up. It is her.
Hold on, is she the one that Cap saved? That was talking about Cap saving her?
Yes, that is her.
Okay, wow.
Like, I remember watching through it and being like, huh, she looks familiar. And then I looked it up. I was like, oh, that's Ellie. Huh. That makes sense. Fair enough. So, yeah, I can't believe it took so long to notice that, because the first Avengers film came out, 2011, 2012? Something like that. I mean, it came out around the same time as the game. So I don't know, it's just interesting. I didn't think that anybody would have noticed that. I don't know how I remembered it, to be honest with you, but I think that is a good spot to wrap this episode up. So that is going to do it for this episode of Side Mission. Be sure to check us out on Twitter at Side Mission Pod. You can follow us on Facebook as well at Side Mission Podcast. For the boys, for Kyle, for Matt, I'm Rusty. Thanks for listening.